Good morning. Today we're going to talk about the Tour de Romandie, which is a tour in Switzerland of the French-speaking regions. The reasons we're interested in the Tour de Romandie is primarily it's a precursor to the Tour de France, and we get to see how the riders are going who are hopefully going to perhaps win the Tour de France. But before I do that, I need to address a couple of issues. First, why am I advertising BMC? Well, I'm not advertising BMC. Those of you who know this is a casquette for the BMC racing team, which unfortunately ended with the untimely death of Andy Rees. But Australians have been associated with the BMC racing team for a long time, and Cadel Evans, the great Cadel Evans, won the Tour de France in 2011 in BMC colours, and that's the primary reason for wearing BMC. Richie Port rode in BMC colours, and of course Alan Piper, a director sportif at BMC, is now the director sportif at UAE Emirates. So a long history of association to the BMC racing team. You could argue, why don't I wear a Green Edge or Bike Exchange hat? It's an Australian team. It's a good question. And if anybody wants to send me a Mitchelton Scott casquette, I'll wear that. Now, admittedly, that's for a Vuelta win, and it was an Australian team with a British rider, but I'll still wear the Mitchelton Scott hat if you send it. Okay. The second thing we need to deal with is, although there are 20 teams in the Tour de Romandie, we can expect maybe 5 or 6 people to be in the running to win. And that's because only team leaders can expect to win. Now, you say, well, haven't non-team leaders won in the past? If we look at the Tour de France of the last 30 years, someone who wasn't a team leader has won twice, and someone who was a junior co-leader has won twice. That's an innovation of the last few years of Team Ineos, where they have 2 co-leaders, but I think if you read Geraint Thomas's autobiography, you'll realize that the co-leaders aren't necessarily equal. Anyway, and that would be Jan Ullrich in 1997, who reportedly had a conversation with Bjarne Riis in a tunnel, and after that he took the lead in the Tour de France. And Carlos Shastri, sorry, I had a brain blank out. Carlos Shastri in 2008, who wasn't the team leader at CSC. He wasn't even in the yellow jersey when he decided to race up Alpe d'Huez to take the lead. We all have seen pictures of Frank Schleck sitting disconsolately on the side of the road in the yellow jersey. And no one knew that Carlos Shastri was going to do that. In fact, if Shastri hadn't attacked, it's likely that Cadel Evans would have won a Tour de France in 2008. Okay, and we're familiar with more recent times. In 2018, after winning 3 Grand Tours, one after the other, Geraint Thomas was put in as a more junior co-leader, just in case, and as we know, it was needed. Geraint didn't fall off his bike that year, and he was in blistering form, and I doubt that Froome would have won, personally. And of course, the next year, Bernal won in a shortened Tour de France, a highly deserved win, and he was the junior co-leader because Geraint self-admitted that he wasn't in the best condition. So I think we can safely say we focus on the team leaders because they're the ones who are expected to win. So if we then turn to the Tour de Romandie, there are 20 teams. They'll be going for various prizes. There's the overall, the GC prize. There's the points jersey. Those are there to enliven the race, to be in the breakaways every day. The TV commentators often call this TV time. And then there are those who are there for the stage wins. And depending on which race it is, there are those who are there to sharpen up for the Grand Tours that are about to come. So if we look at it from that perspective, in terms of who's likely to win the GC, there are only around 6, depending on how you count it. There are only about 6 people who are likely to win. So although there are a lot of people out there, it's really a very small pool of people who could win. So if I look at that in more detail, what's interesting about this particular Tour de Romandie? Well, some people have already written off Chris Froome. He's not won a Grand Tour in 3 years. He's had a potentially career-ending accident, and some people would say that it was a career-ending because he was 35 at the time. But he's on the comeback trail, and he's got a team that's behind him. And so how he performs at the Tour de Romandie is critical to how he will go in the Tour de France. We have to see what his performance is like. The obvious person who is likely to win is Geraint Thomas, riding for Team Ineos. And we'll see. Richie Porter's there, and they, Ineos tends to make their decisions right at the last minute, and they may be co-leaders again this year for the Tour de France. An exciting prospect, is Mark Hirschi. He's left Sunweb, which is Team DSM, and he's gone to UAE Emirates, and you would have to think that's because he wants to ride for GC and not ride just for stage wins. So this is our chance to have a look, see what he's got in his bag, and I, for one, will be watching Mark Hirschi with interest. Then, thirdly, there are those people who've had excellent early careers, but their careers since then have not quite panned out as they would have hoped. These are people like Lopez and Kruijswijk. They've shown a lot of promise, but they've never won the top step at a Grand Tour. Sometimes through injury, sometimes through misadventure. And their careers have seemed to go off the boil. So how they perform at the Tour de Romandie will give us a good idea as to whether they still have the form that will be needed to win a Grand Tour. Well, there are a couple of other riders that are of interest. There are Gaviria and Richesi. They left Quickstep a little while ago, but the results have not been there for some reason or other. Gaviria did get COVID-19. He got it twice, and so we don't really know what we can expect. Be interesting to see how it goes. Tour de Romandie has got a lot of mountains, so maybe he's there for fitness training, because he is a sprinter. Kelderman, Wilco Kelderman is sort of bumped around top 5, not quite getting there. So this will be an opportunity. We can see what his form's like this year. And then there are the dark horses. Patrick Bevan. Will we see him take the points jersey? Alexei Lutsenko. How will he go? Will he get a top 5, top 3 position? Iran. Rigoberto Urán came second in the Giro a few years ago. And TJ Van Garderen, who once came 5th, riding for BMC in the Tour de France. You know, be interesting to watch how they go. Sometimes they've crashed out. Sometimes it just hasn't been their day. Last but not least, Peter Sagan. Peter Sagan's team has come out and said they're looking for him to move on. Or, put it another way, they were saying the amount of money they spend on Peter, they could spend on a crop of new riders, preferably German, who could do similar things to Peter. So Peter's under pressure from his own team. That's got to be a tragic. To me, that's tragic. I'm completely gobsmacked that they would do such a thing. And then, what we always hope for is a big upset. If we knew what the big upset would be, then it wouldn't be a big upset. And so we look to see what will happen there. But hopefully it won't be a big upset because of a road crash, but because someone has come along who has the ability and who's got the performance on the day to shine. And that's all I have to say about the Tour de Romandie. Until next time, cheers. See you later.